Okay, so let's dive right into this. We're looking at a pretty wild public dispute where a congressman, famous for fighting corruption, suddenly finds himself accused of his own massive scandal. This is a story about big promises, political power, and what happens when the lines of accountability get seriously blurred.
And this quote? This is the accusation that kicked the whole thing off. It's from Dr. K.C. Halili of the Peanut Gallery Media Network, and it is absolutely explosive. It's a powerful claim that sets the stage for everything we're about to unpack.
So, to really get what this fight is all about, we first have to know who's in the ring. On one side, you have a new congressman who made his name exposing corruption, and on the other, a doctor-turned-advocate who's now pointing the finger right back at him.
So first up, meet Congressman Leandro Leviste. He really burst onto the scene as this young, fearless crusader, right? He made huge headlines for calling out what he said was a massive kickback scheme in the Department of Public Works and Highways, the DPWH. And yeah, it's also worth noting he comes from a very powerful political family.
And his main accuser is Dr. K.C. Halili. She's a medical doctor who uses her media platform to go after what she sees as major government failures, everything from the Department of Health to, well, now, the Department of Energy. She's got a reputation for not backing down.
Now, Dr. Halili's entire case is built around a really powerful comparison, an analogy that's designed to frame Leviste's actions in a very specific and, let's be honest, a very damaging way.
She directly compares Leviste's solar contracts to this infamous Discaya ghost flood control scandal. Now think about what that means. She isn't just saying he failed to deliver. No, she's suggesting this is the exact same kind of scandal where projects only exist on paper. And the scale of what we're talking about is just wow. According to Dr. Halili's reporting, by the end of 2021, Leviste's company, Solar Philippines, had been awarded 67%, that's 2/3, of all solar energy contracts from the government.
But here's the real kicker. Get this. Despite holding contracts for about 14,000 megawatts of power, the actual amount that was up and running by 2024 was less than 2%. That is a gigantic gap between what was promised and what was actually delivered.
Okay, but hold on, because this is where the whole debate pivots. A writer named Rances jumps into the conversation, and he argues that this powerful ghost projects analogy, well, it might be completely missing the point.
Rances makes us stop and ask a really critical question. Are we even comparing the same things here? Is a private company failing to build its own project the same as a contractor taking your tax money for a road that they never ever built?
He basically says that Dr. Halili's analogy, as effective as it is, collapses two very different worlds. He thinks that by lumping them together, we lose sight of a fundamental truth about where the money comes from and, more importantly, who is actually taking the risk.
All right, stick with me here, because understanding this next part is the key to the entire argument. It all comes down to the difference between two totally different kinds of government deals. Okay, first, you've got these solar energy service contracts, the SESCs, that Leviste's company had. According to Rances, you should think of these as basically permission slips. The company gets the right to build, but they have to find their own money. They take on all the financial risk. And this is crucial. The government does not pay them a dime from the national budget. Now, compare that to a DPWH procurement contract, for something like a road or a flood wall. That is a whole different animal. That's a government purchase, it's funded directly with taxpayer money, and public funds are paid out from the government to the company doing the work.
And this little chart just lays it out perfectly. A solar contract? That's private money, and the risk is on the developer. If they fail, they face penalties. A DPWH contract? That's our money, taxpayer money. The risk is on the public, and if they fail, that means our money is just gone.
So you might be thinking, okay, that's a technical difference, but why does it matter so much? Well, according to Rances, it changes what he calls the entire moral math of the situation. It's not just a technicality, it's everything.
Rances puts it like this. Think of two completely separate lanes on a highway. In lane one, the government is paying contractors. That's the pipeline where public money is actually moving, and where it can be stolen. In lane two, developers are funding their own projects. The issue there isn't theft, it's about not getting the job done. And he argues that when you blur these two lanes, you cause a lot of damage. First, you make real theft of public funds seem less serious. And at the same time, you overcharge the solar projects by making it sound like taxpayer money was lost when it wasn't. We end up completely misdiagnosing the problem we're trying to fix.
So where does all this leave us? The point of this explainer isn't to pick a winner here. It's really to give you the framework to analyze these kinds of complex stories for yourself, because trust me, they will come up again.
In the end, we're left with two very different, competing ways to see this. On one hand, Dr. Halili is laser-focused on the outcome, a massive failure to deliver on a promise that left people in the dark. On the other hand, Rob Rances is focused on the process, saying we can't even have the right conversation if we misunderstand the system itself.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty important question. We know corruption travels through a system, so if we really want to hold power accountable, maybe the first, most crucial step is making sure we know how to spot the right pipeline. How do we learn to tell the difference so we know exactly where we should be looking?